Well, it's Monday night, it's 9:30 p.m. It can only mean one thing. It's another edition of the We Talk Chelsea podcast. Chelsea podcast hosted by three. This week is two. Temba is still on holiday, still slacking. Hosted by two Chelsea fans, occasionally Sunday league football players, very much defensive players. We're not really attacking at all, are we? Let's face it, we are not that type of player. Charlie, how you been?
Yeah, all good, all good. Another week. As a Chelsea fan, it just seems to be the busiest. It seems to be busier now than it is in a sort of normal transfer window for us. I've never seen anything like it. It's just news flying out of every newspaper stand in the country and in the world. Seems to be talk of the town at the moment. But yeah, no, and obviously Pochettino, welcome. You've got a pretty tough job on your hands, but we wish that the man the best, and he's I've said it before, he's got the best opportunity. He's got full pre-season, a full transfer window, and I'm sure he's had a lot of influence even before he officially started. So yeah.
You are correct, yeah. Today is day one of the Mauricio Pochettino era. He's had all these club interviews that's protracted. I can't even get my words out. You can tell I'm tired and I've got an early train in the morning. Had his first interview with Chelsea Football Club as manager of Chelsea and sporting the brand new training kit, which might I add is... Oh, it is beautiful. That is definitely going to take a hit on my bank balance, no doubt. I will no doubt be picking that up in the short term. Honestly, talking is so bad for me today, Charlie. I can't even begin to tell you. But yeah, it's the first time. Let's go now. So it's day one. Obviously, he's probably had some of these dealings with the people that have come into the club, though. Nicolas Jackson. I'm assuming people like Paul Winstanley has probably spoken to Mauricio Pochettino, said, look, these are the players we want to bring in. Do you want them? Felix famously not signed by Chelsea. We had that option to potentially get him back in on loan. Pochettino is said that he's not interested in bringing him back in. How do you feel day one? I mean, have you had the opportunity to see the interview or just to read the headlines and see some of the stuff that he's been saying, Charlie?
I'll be honest, I haven't, so you might need to just bring me up to date with that.
Yeah, no, of course. So I think the famous one is he mentioned, Chelsea. He said this. It's a kind of, I don't know how you strike it. He has to kind of strike the balance of being, trying to get the fans on side early doors, and also maybe saying things he wouldn't necessarily mean. I think he said something like Chelsea being the biggest club in England in the last 10, 12, 15 years. I don't agree with that. I think that's a very 20 years, maybe a push, but I wouldn't say we're the biggest club in England in the last 15 years. Would you?
Well, we're certainly we're up there, aren't we? I mean, trophy. I think trophy wise, are we isn't that right, or is it have Man City now overtaken us
I think
just this
City
time
have
around? I think
overtaken us now.
probably
Yeah.
probably just this time around, but no, we have been we have been. I mean, if you think 20 years ago, what were we talking? 2003. That was when we were just coming through basically under well, we just beat Abramovich had just bought us. I think that pretty much this time 20 years ago, right? So since then we have been probably certainly in terms of trophies, we've been the dominant force, probably apart from in the last few years, probably pandemic onwards, if you like, although there is a Champions League in there, but since then anyway. Yeah, I think we're certainly the biggest in London in that time. That's there's no doubt about that. I'd probably say second only to Man City. So he's got a point there. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really hopeful that he can turn things around. I think I think we needed the break as fans, and I'm sure the players did as well. There'll be a completely different atmosphere in the dressing room. We've taken certain players out of that dressing room who we don't know what they were like in the dressing room. We'll never know. But a lot of senior players as well have gone. Players who've been there for a long time, and players who just didn't look like they wanted to play there last season. And what's left is basically a load of players who should have quite a lot of hunger. They should want to work for Pochettino. He's got a good reputation. Not many of these players have won a lot, which could be a bit of an issue. But they should be hungry and keen to learn. They've got a whole pre-season ahead of them. So I think he's in with a good chance. I think it's just gelling that team together. I think that's going to be the real issue.
Yeah.
These players don't really know each other that well. They played together, some of them, for just the last part of last season, and most haven't looked really up to it. To be honest, there's a lot of players that have a lot of question marks above their head. Like Mudryk and people like that. So he needs to really work on some of these young guys and get them going.
Yeah, and I think a key thing that I found very interesting and what you mentioned here was, there's not a lot of players last season that actually looked like they wanted to play for Chelsea. And I think, fortunately, it looks like some of these players have gone out the front door in the early stages of the transfer window. I think a key thing is he mentioned in the interview is he wants the players to be dying, dying for Chelsea. Every time he steps on the pitch, they want them to be putting the work in. And notoriously, he's famous for the first 2 weeks of his training regime is basically just pure running fitness. I'm really excited to see the first game of the season. It's probably not ideal that we're going to be going to Liverpool away. Is it Liverpool away or
It's at
Liverpool at
home.
home? Liverpool home.
Yeah.
So it could be interesting,
Yeah.
Liverpool bringing in some new players as well in the midfield, McAllister and Zobolo. I can't even pronounce it. There was a TikTok I watched of the video and I can't even remember. It's not fresh in my memory at the moment, so please do forgive me. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go. And it's like you mentioned, he's got a famous reputation of working with younger players. He developed that Tottenham squad, albeit it is a Tottenham squad, but I think there's definitely more talent, younger talent in this Chelsea team with a higher potential than he had at the time with Spurs. So I think it'd be interesting to see how he manages that and also manages some of the older players. We've got less and less older players now. I think we've only got 3 players from the Champions League final 2 years ago, which is scary to think. We've only got Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, and Reece James, which begs an interesting question: is where is this experience coming from, and are we going to be over reliant on youthful exuberance? Do you reckon?
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, we have brought in, there are players like Sterling in there as well, who I would say are very senior, experienced players that we have bought. But we have sold a lot as well, like Koulibaly. Again, like Koulibaly, I'm not saying he's taken to English football very well, or he took to English football very well, should I say? But at the same time, he's a very experienced defender.
Yeah.
Um, we've offloaded a few, a lot of senior players as well. So I think that is going to be the biggest problem. And like I say, not a lot of winners in that team, apart from those aforementioned players. There's not a lot of winners, and I don't think Mudryk's won anything much in his career. Maybe an under 21, golden nugget or whatever. I don't know what they even call it.
Golden nugget, a
Well, I
cereal.
don't know. I don't know. Like what I'm trying to say. He might have won. He might have won an
Yeah,
under 14s prize for Dynamo Kiev or whoever. But I don't
yeah,
think these players that we brought in, none of them really have won a lot. Like in terms of trophies and in terms of winning big things. So they have to be developed into winners. Ultimately, look, you've got to win your first trophy at some point. So it's fair enough. But usually you surround yourself with other winners, and that helps get you over the line, and then it makes you become a winner yourself. But at the same time, it takes time. I don't think there's any Chelsea fan that I know that this season is going, we're going to win X, Y, Z. I don't think we're going to win anything personally. I think I mean, if we won the Carling Cup or whatever it's called, I think we'd be very happy just to win that. But I think really it's getting back in. It's improving on last season and ideally getting into a top 8, a top 7, something like that.
yeah,
I'd be happy with, as long as it's like on an upward trajectory, as long as there's something
yeah,
to look, as long as if it doesn't start that well, but it improves and improves, and we get a few results. If we beat Tottenham or something, or we beat Man United away, or there's just something to go on, I'll be happy. It's a bit like Man United this season, although they have done quite well, to be fair. So,
yeah. I mean, it's like the 1988 hit single by Yaz, "The Only Way Is Up." So finishing 12th, knocked out in the third round of every cup competition domestically, and then out of the quarterfinals of the Champions League. The bar is low at the moment for Pochettino, so I think we're just looking for a little bit upward trajectory, a bit of momentum. Would be interesting to see. Dale makes an interesting point on one of the most senior players leaving the club. Cesar Azpilicueta is rumoured to be having his contract mutually terminated by the club and himself in order for him to complete a move. Initially, it looked like earlier this week he was going to make the jump to Inter Milan, but it's now looking likely he's going to be going back to Spain to play for Atletico Madrid. It's kind of a weird one for Azpilicueta because you can definitely see his legs are gone. His legs are gone, so he's kind of resorted to those fouls to kind of deal with those tricky wingers. And you need that kind of player to begin like anyway. But it's good to have that kind of player who does have the opportunity to, use burst of pace to kind of keep up with those attackers. But he's Chelsea's longest serving player. He cost us £7 million about 11 years ago now, just after winning the Champions League. Club captain, it leaves us with a big captain shaped hole. And, he's one of Chelsea's top appearance makers of all time. I think he's 507 appearances he's made in all competitions. He's been a fantastic stalwart for the club. And it's just a shame that something like this wasn't announced prior to the close of the season, because I think it would have had a lot more poignancy in the last game of the season against Newcastle to give him the opportunity to actually say thank you and say goodbye. Because I think if the crowd were aware that he was going to be leaving this season, they would have probably made a lot more of an effort to stay and wave goodbye to some of the players that we didn't expect to be leaving. I think Azpilicueta would have potentially been one of them, only signed a contract extension last month. What are your thoughts on Azpilicueta? Do you think the timing is right now, or do you think, given the fact the average age of the side, the experience that we're kind of lacking at the moment, it could have been useful to have a player like Azpilicueta around in the squad?
Yeah, but I suppose it's up to him as well, isn't it? Does he want to sit there on the? I mean, because basically what he would be is more like a mentor. He would be like a kind of like a James Milner like last season at Liverpool. He might play the odd game, but really he's just there to sit on the bench and I'm sure in the dressing room he's good. I don't have any doubts that he brings something to the dressing room. I don't think he's one of the ones who's moaning and groaning
No.
and downing tools and things like that. I just, but even at his age, by the way, the effort that he puts in, the amount of sweat that comes off his brow, you just know that he's putting the effort in. But I think he'll be back at Chelsea. I agree though, the timing was funny, and it is funny actually in the way that we did. A lot of these players knew they were going, and they didn't do anything for any of them. I'm not sure why. I don't know whether that was something to do. Maybe that's just club. Maybe the club just fell out with some of these players. I don't
I
know.
mean,
There might have been a bit of that. It wouldn't surprise me. But a player like Azpilicueta, I doubt it.
yeah.
But one
I would.
like Kovacic, for example, I can imagine he was like, I want to leave. This new ownership stinks or something. You can just kind of imagine him being a bit more like
Yeah, I guess like I wouldn't expect like something for Kovacic, but even I wouldn't want to see something completely wanky like that we did with John Terry when he left the club. When they did that 26-minute and then he gets that clap and then he's carried off the pitch. I thought that was nauseating. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's one of the worst things we've ever done
Yeah, but
as a
then he
club.
got, but then he went back on the pitch, didn't he? And then he did that big speech and thing. Like,
Yeah, but
yeah,
but the fact that he got substituted in the 26th minute and then off he pops, I think it was just stupid. Like it would have been nice to have something like that for Aspilicueta, like knowing this is his last game, like having that time set aside and say, do you know what? At some point he's going to be leaving the pitch, not carried off the pitch, not like that, clapped off, have the opportunity to like have his moment. But something like that, not in the 28th minute, but 70th minute. It's a game. It's a dead rubber match against Newcastle. It didn't really matter, did it? It's just a shame. Just a shame it didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye. And potentially he's been with the club for over 10 years, so there could potentially be a testimonial at some point in the future for him. But
I think he'll be back as well. I think that like there'd be there are certain players. He's one of them that could do a role at Chelsea in the future.
and he's doing he's
And
doing his badges. He's in
yeah, so
he's
he
done
could
his
be.
badges.
He's one of them, isn't he? There's, Czech came back and did a job for a while.
Mhm.
Lampard's obviously come back. Terry's come back, hasn't he? Not doing anything much, but he did it, didn't he? do a youth team? Right, he did something there.
Very, very briefly, yeah. It was more Cole that came back with Lampard, but Terry's now, he went to Leicester at the end of last
Yeah,
season for a
with
little
Dean
bit
Smith. Yeah,
with Dean Smith. So I don't know what Terry's doing at the moment, but I think Terry will always just be a club ambassador regardless
yeah.
of whatever job role he takes up. But it's just intriguing. It's just a shame that that opportunity to say goodbye. But because I think maybe it's me, and there's people watching that might think otherwise, but I just think testimonials are a little bit outdated. They're just not
Yeah, well,
really.
they're only
They're not really
testimony.
necessary. They're just.
No, well, they were only made because players didn't earn enough money back in the day. So that was basically their way, the club's way. They used to give as far as I'm aware, basically the gate receipts to the player. These
Oh,
testimony, and that's the reason why they used to put them on, was just so that they
well, it's
they
not
could give
needed
it.
now.
No, it's just like a last bonus. Whereas now, I'm guessing it all just goes to charity, or it just doesn't go. It just goes in the club's coffers. So you're right; it's just totally not needed. Um, yeah, I mean, not many players these days even get one. To be honest, Zola got one, I remember, but I mean, there's not many that get one these days.
Yeah,
Um, they're a bit of a waste of time, and they're just a bit of a kickabout, aren't they? It's not the actual
yeah,
football itself is so naff, and they have celebrity appearances and silly things. It's a bit of an exhibition match. It's not
yeah.
nothing much else.
Well, we can talk about all the further outgoings for Chelsea a little bit later on in the podcast, but a key one on this one is, the main man, Money Mount, is looking to leave Chelsea. Rumours are that he's completed his medical earlier on today at Carrington, looking to join Manchester United, soon to be announced in the next 48 hours or so, joining the club with a fee up to £60 million. A couple again. Mount is a player that we kind of didn't expect. I guess, naively, we just thought he was going to sign another contract at some point. Same, we didn't expect Havertz to leave. Havertz has left. I think I made my feelings perfectly clear on Havertz last week. For the benefit of those who didn't watch this, I thought it was absolutely disgusting the way that Kai Havertz has left Chelsea. He's a little rat that has jumped ship at a time when things aren't going a little bit too well. But it just made me feel a little bit better because whilst he had signed for Chelsea, he was struggling on £150,000 a week. Kai Havertz, he was struggling. Now he's at Arsenal. He is, he's able to feed his whole family now. He's on £320,000 a week at Arsenal because he is, without a doubt, a £320,000 player.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that's surely his agent who's pushed that, and him, but his agent as well. You can't you don't know what for what reason he's signed for. Has he signed purely for money, or has he signed for because? Yeah, but you say that, but I am Chelsea through and through, and I hate
Yeah,
Arsenal. But I will admit that as a prospect at the moment, going to Arsenal this summer, footballing wise, is a brighter future
potentially.
just based upon last season.
Potentially, but at the same time, you don't join from one club to a club's rivals. You don't jump ship. It's not that well known in this country. Like, you don't go from Liverpool to Manchester United, not at least directly, Michael Owen. But there is those moments where you do make that switch. David Luiz and Petr Cech went there because they wanted to still play at a higher level. But Chelsea fans understood that. This is Kai Havertz, who's not even hit his peak form. Admittedly, he was played out of position the last couple of seasons. He has potential, but he's so overwhelmingly frustrating to watch, and I don't think he's going to get in ahead of Odegaard next season. I really,
It,
really don't.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
Odegaard's a better player. He just won't get ahead of him.
maybe he's just got a really good agent because
Maybe.
he wasn't worth the 70 odd million that we paid for him, and
No.
he wasn't worth the 150 grand a week we were paying him either. It was just half of what Mount was getting paid, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, double what Mount was getting paid, by the way.
Different. Well,
Different
we can
players, but
split
yeah,
hairs.
different.
We can
Yeah,
split hairs on that because the timing is a bit different in terms of
yeah.
when he signed the contract and when Kai did. So
But in terms of in terms of like his potential, he's never reached his potential at Chelsea. He's always been, but there's plenty of. I mean, Ariza Balaga is the same, and yeah, he's our longest serving player now. I mean,
yeah,
that guy, I don't know how he stays, and he's on 300 and something thousand a week, isn't he, or something?
yeah.
Well, no, he's on a lot more anyway, but.
Yeah. I mean, we digress. We need to talk about Mason Mount. We've gone from Kai Havertz. I made my feet perfectly clear on that. But Mason Mount, in my opinion, the reason why I spoke about Kai Havertz is to give this comment context. Is I think Mason Mount joining Manchester United, whilst not a direct rival, because yeah, we're somewhat in the same realm in terms of ability, not really last season, but in terms of stature, I guess potentially in terms of a top six club. But it just stinks. It really does. It just as soon as it was announced that he's so keen to push through for this move to Manchester United, it was it was like why you make it like this is a person that had joined Cobham, been with the academy from the age of 8 years old, played with us at every level. He made the thing to his dad. He's saying, "Oh, I'm going to be John Terry. You need to move because no players ever broken through as the academy side." And he says, "No, I'm going to be the first one since John Terry to do that." He breaks through. He gets in through Frank Lampard, and all of a sudden things aren't going a little bit too well. We offer him an astronomical amount of money, and it's just not enough. And he just jumped ship. 2 years ago after the Champions League finals, like, I can't ever see myself leaving Chelsea Football Club. 2 years later, well, I'd say even less time than that because let's face it, he down tools in October this year. Like the last game he turned up was the Villa game, Villa away when he scored 2 goals. It stinks. I think it's just it's snaky. He's an absolute rat. He's
It's hard to.
yeah.
It's hard
It's just
because he's like a fan favorite and he has been for so long. It's so hard to like. Havertz is kind of like he's only a fan favorite because of one goal, basically.
one goal. Yeah,
And so you could if he hadn't scored that goal, he'd be a Giroud, wouldn't he? He'd basically just be a Giroud. Like and
yeah.
Giroud's a great player. He'd probably be. He's not nowhere near as good as Giroud actually. But in terms of like legendary status at the club, he would just be Giroud. He'd just be a player that played a few seasons, like
Yeah, and it's like
playing a
what
lot of matches.
it's like we
You
said
know,
with Mason Mount. With Mason Mount, I don't see Mount having a legacy at Chelsea anymore. I don't see it.
No, he
I
won't.
don't
No,
see him. His legacy by making this move so early on in his career. If he got to like 28, 29 years old or something like that, and he spent all this time said, you know what, I just really fancy a change of pace, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go play for Manchester United. I think it'd be a little bit more like easier to take. Like the fact that he's not even reached the pinnacle of his playing ability just yet. The fact he down tools earlier on at the start of the season, and all of a sudden he's pissing off. It's just we the club and the fans invested their time. Like they saw him as their next kind of like club legend to go through the ranks, and there's been a debate about who's more proper Chelsea, and is it Mason Mount or is it Reece James? And Reece James has won that debate because Mount he's a little rat and he's just joined Man United just at a time when things are going a little bit bad.
but then I'll ask you this: do you think Mason Mount would have stayed at Chelsea had Abramovich still had the reins of the club? As in,
I mean,
do you think there would have we would have got to that agreement? And I think that's got to say there's a both sides thing. By the way, that's not a criticism at the owners
yeah,
because it's just as much Mount. Really, he shouldn't really care who puts the money in his pocket too much. It's as long as everything's all right on the pitch. Obviously, everything wasn't all right on the pitch last season, but he could have given it one more year. I mean, Reece James isn't crying out to leave, is he, or Chilwell or anyone else? They're all like, we're quite happy to stay.
yeah.
But obviously, they've also had contracts, and that's the thing. I suppose it's like that's the burning question: is how close was Abramovich to getting that over the line
Before it
last time
happened, yeah.
around, and then when they went back to that negotiating table, how far away was it from what he might have been offered before or thought he might have had in the bag? Because it's a bit strange, isn't it, how a player can go from player of the year. I know it's like a lot of people saying that player of the year, but only because he's proper Chelsea. But he was a good player. There's no doubt about that for 2-3 years prior to this season.
Yeah.
And he still is a good player. He's still got some. He's just missing something at the moment. Last season, you think to yourself, well, if they're basing that contract on last season alone, I don't know. I think there's a mixture of the two. I think the frustrations with the contract probably just affected his game a lot, to be honest, as much as anything. So I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't know what to think, to be honest. I think it's one of those that it'll all come out in the wash. Mount will probably write an autobiography when he retires or something, or he'll do an interview. He might even find that once he moves to Man United, he might do an interview. He's still contracted to Chelsea even now. So you
Yeah,
can't just come out and go, oh, this, that, and the other, because he's not allowed
for
to.
sure. And I
But
don't
if
think I don't think he would. Like when he, it's like what you say. He's not going to do it in his first interview with Man United because he's going to make, from an optics view, from a PR standpoint, he's going to make that all about Man United because he needs to get the
yeah,
Man United fans on side. But when his autobiography is released, I will be one of the first people to try and read it. I wouldn't buy it because I don't want to put money in that little rat's pocket, but I'll find a way to stream that, download that illegally and read
straight.
it. I'll find a way to download that illegally and read his thoughts on that, or at least get some sort of excerpt from it. But it's one of those things. If anything, it's just disappointing. Like I sound like a parent. I am a parent, but it's just disappointing to see like a player that you kind of see him as like, if you're watching in the crowd, like you see him as one of Reece James is one of our own, like Mason Mount is one of our own, and it's kind of just it just smells and it's just iffy. It's just iffy, and I would say I want to wish him the best at Man United, but I really don't. I just hope he has a shit time. It
Yeah, but I can't.
sounds really
But
insulting. I wish he does. I wish he has a shit time and he doesn't get in front of Ericsson. Ericsson keeps him out of the squad. But
I think the
Jaden
thing is,
Jaden Sancho comes good and he puts him aside. I would rather that, to be completely honest.
yeah, I think the only thing as well is like he's um, once that negotiation had broken down, you can't now blame the club for selling him. That's just
Yeah,
now
it's the
now
right
now
time.
Mount is driving that move now at this moment in time. He's had his, in a sense, he has to go. I don't think many Chelsea fans are like. I think they've all got. I think people have now got their head around the situation a bit, haven't they? I think there's a lot less like Chelsea fans going, "Oh, why are we selling Mount?" And I doubt there's going to be like bowly out protests outside the ground first game of the season because we sold
No.
Mount. I think people have. It's been a build up to this. It hasn't happened overnight. People have kind of digested the information given to them, and
Yeah.
and I think at the moment it's the jury's a bit out. Some fans will there probably will be some fans that'll boo Mount. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't. I think there'll be others who, yeah, exactly. But then there'll be others who won't, and I probably wouldn't at the moment. But then, like I say, if it will come out in the wash, you don't know what. Like if he scored,
Oh,
if he
mate.
okay,
If
all right, if he scores against
if you can boo
Chelsea,
Kukurea for being a bit shit, you can boo Mason Mount for being a bit shit and also being a bit good and deliberately down in tools and leaving the club that you love to join
yeah,
a rival.
yeah, okay. But if okay with Mount, if he scores against Chelsea next season,
He'll celebrate.
if he
He will.
okay, if he does, then there you go. Then that's it, isn't it?
He's not.
But
He's not going to do a Frank Lampard. He's not going to hold his
I
hand up
don't,
and
I
like not
don't
celebrate.
know.
He will celebrate.
Yeah,
He will keep it. He will try and make it look like he's not, but he'll do a smaller thing. He won't do this gay little stupid little thing like that. But
yeah,
shouldn't have said that, but it's just one of those things, isn't it? Anyway, contract talk. Dale says contract talk to me is always interesting. Purely comes down to a view on whether you get paid on what you've done versus what you're projected to do. Yeah, it is completely like contract talk. We don't know the full ins and outs of the contract talk by all means. Chelsea I think offered 230,000 at last instance. I believe he's signing the contract with Manchester United for 200. So he's taking less money to go play for a club that didn't develop him. Anyway, Coaster Comedy is saying, good evening, guys. Good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the
evening.
live. Make sure you send your questions in the chat. Really appreciate that. If you haven't had the opportunity to do so, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like at somewhere around there on YouTube. I can't even see the screen. I'm on StreamYard, so I've no idea where it is. Anyway, we digress. We move on to Mount. So let's have a look at some of the players that potentially are coming in the window. So the key one is Moises Caicedo is the big one. I feel like this has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. Is it just
Mm.
me? I think it's been going on for at least 10 days or so, at least over 10 days, where there's like talks, agreements have been made. It's just it. When's it gonna happen? When's it gonna get across the line? Like, is it something that's gonna happen in the next couple of days? Because it feels like it's becoming a very drawn out process. And I think the good thing is about this is Arsenal, because they've gone for Havertz and they're going to get Rice. I don't think they're going to go for Caicedo as well. So that means Arsenal are going to get a step back from it. Manchester United are going for Mount and they're not going to go for Caicedo. Kovacic had gone to Manchester City again, another rat jump ship. Doesn't matter. I feel like we're the only club that's really in for him at the moment, but it just feels like when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And I think a key thing on that was FFP. The June 30th kind of deadline is the key one. But it's been the same thing for 10 days. Yeah, you're not as frustrated as I am, Charlie.
Yeah, I am, and I'm worried that we're going to make a mess of it. But then I think, well, I was going to ask you this because I've never quite understood it. What's the actual advantage of dragging a transfer all the way till the end of the summer or whatever? Because we've started now, haven't we? We're back at Cobham. We're basically the season's. The players. I'm guessing the players aren't back yet, but they will be fairly soon. Is that right? The
Yeah.
first team, like,
No,
on the whole.
some players back already. Who was there seen training the other week? Amari Hutchison was there last week training. So I don't think it was just him. So some of the younger players are training, players that aren't away with the under-21s, but some of the more senior players have been given extended time off. So I'm assuming they'll be back at some point this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't understand the intricate, like the actual, what is the advantage of dragging a transfer on? It just doesn't seem advantageous for anyone, for
No,
Brighton or for us. I think maybe once the Mount one goes through, which it should do, let's say tomorrow. I can't see
yeah,
it can't go on till the end of this week. Surely it's like, look, this looks like that'll drop while we're on air. Once that goes through, I'm guessing we're guaranteed that money then it's just a case of giving it over to Brighton, isn't it? Almost,
yeah,
So I'm guessing you have to give certain guarantees and things when you do these trials. I wouldn't even know, but you might have to show some collateral that you've got the money
yeah,
available, and perhaps just having that transfer go through just shows Brighton that we're good for the money. I mean, it sounds ridiculous because we're backed by
yeah, for
billionaires,
sure.
but it's maybe something to do with that. I don't know, because it seems that it's the big transfers, isn't it, that seem to go on. Like Kane, I can't see Kane moving anytime soon. But yeah, at the
Well,
same time, I can't see him staying at Tottenham.
Well,
So
yeah, it's like Bayern Munich. They put the offer in for Kane, and it was
mm,
turned down. I think the offer was made at like 60 million or something
60,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think Daniel Levy is probably going to try and stretch this out as much as possible to try and get as much money as he possibly can. But Daniel Levy also runs the risk of getting rid of Kane towards the end of the season, then scrambling to find somebody to replace him. But this isn't a We Talk Tottenham podcast. This is a We Talk Chelsea podcast. But Caicedo is a fascinating. Um, he's kind of key. He's still a younger player, but he's got Premier League experience, and he's fantastic. He kind of fills that Kante role that we're going to have a big hole shaped gap in our midfield, and he's going to be that mopping up and laying the ball off for Enzo and allowing Enzo Fernandez to press on forward a little bit further with the protection of Caicedo at the back. It'd be interesting to get across the line. We shall see when if this Mount deal goes through and how quickly soon after it comes through. And it could get even more drawn out. Still 2 months left of the window, Dale says. Yeah, absolutely. But I think I can agree. I think you can probably agree with me. I just want to get these things done nice and early and then get the players working as a team and get Pochettino the best start possible to the season. No Europe next year. So, the league is everything we have to focus on is the league. So we may as well get that right. Coast Comedy's here saying, any Hazard news? I love the guy. Absolutely love the guy. Just throw this one out there for you, Charlie. If Hazard was, he's available on a free, but if the option's there to bring in Hazard, he is experienced.
Mm.
He's 32 years old now, I believe.
Yeah.
Is he the right experience to bring in, or is the Eden Hazard boat gone? Has the train left the station on that? Is there the nostalgia of bringing him back like with Didier Drogba, or is that something that's going to be detrimental to kind of the overall long-term planning that we're currently seeing by Clear Lake Capital?
Yeah, I just don't know if he's a Pochettino player, is he? If that makes sense. He's obviously a Chelsea player, but I think now his legs have gone a little bit, and Pochettino relies on high
High
intensity,
press.
high
Yeah.
press. I don't think he's ever. I mean, he was in his younger days, definitely.
Not now, no.
No, but he's not. He's not. He's now. He's not. No, he's not. And he's also not apparently a really bad trainer, isn't he? He's like that's one of the things that's come out from Real Madrid that he's training. I can't remember who said he was a senior player. It was someone like. It was someone
Tony
like
Cruz. I believe it's
that
Tony
was it, Tony
Cruz.
Cruz, while he was still at the club, which is bizarre as well. That he'd just come out like that and say he's just so bad. He's like at training, he doesn't seem to care. He's obviously brilliant on the pitch, and I think he's one of the in, in my lifetime one of the most talented players that we've ever had.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Easily, along with Zola and people like that. He was one of the most talented, definitely. And I mean, there was one season that he really dragged us through the season. I can't remember. I think it was his very last one actually, and
Yes, with
he got his move, yeah. But he really dragged us through that season. Um, yeah, what a talent, and some of the goals. I remember Liverpool away, he scored at least two good ones that I can remember, and at Arsenal at home when he ran through the entire team virtually from the halfway line. That was that, and scored at the end of it. So
Yeah.
he's he's a brilliant player. I'd like to see him back, but I don't know if it's the right time, and I don't
No.
know if it's the right. It would be nice to see him back, like in some form, but I just don't know how it would look and if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense. I don't think he's the right player to bring in now. Like, if he was to come in, it would be under the provisions he knows that he's going to be a squad player, because you need to give the chance to the Madueke's, to the Mudryk, and he's basically going to be given that kind of mentor type role. But I just can't see him come to Chelsea back again. Like, it would be if we paid anything over than 100,000 a week or 150,000 pounds a week for him. I think we're overpaying for him at this stage of his career. Just what he can bring to Chelsea, I think it'd be beneficial for him to probably play. Rumours of him potentially going playing back in Belgium. I don't know if you saw those a couple of weeks back, but he's got moved to Saudi, moved to MLS written all over him. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I was
Belgium
going to say.
play. International, fantastic player, played for Real Madrid, won so many Champions Leagues, won so many Premier Leagues, La Ligas. That's got him all over. We're moving back to Caicedo. Dale here says, although in my opinion, Tony Early for 55 million versus Caicedo for 80 million, I take Tony Early can play as a 6 and as an 8. I mean, yeah, it gives you that versatility in the middle, but I think Caicedo is very much a player that fills a niche. I don't think Tonoli is that kind of as good as Caicedo in the role that we want to sign Caicedo for, if that makes sense. I think we'd rather have somebody as strong as a pivot point, as a protective midfielder, a defensive midfielder, as opposed to like a progressive midfielder like Enzo Fernandez. We don't want a hybrid of the two. I think it leads to kind of confusion who does what. But that's down to Pochettino, and that's just my opinion. And who am I? I'm just a lowly idiot. Anyway, let's move across and have a look at some of the other things that we've got going on for Chelsea at the moment. Let's look at some of the more outgoings. Should we move to outgoings or incomings? What do you want to look at?
I want to talk about that Pulisic thing and what everyone thinks about
Pulisic,
that. Yeah,
yes,
that's
no
quite
problem.
interesting, wasn't it, today?
So Christian Pulisic famously signed for Chelsea a few seasons back in January. He went back on loan to Borussia Dortmund, signing for £60 million. It's fascinating. Looking at Pulisic, looking to. Rumours are that Lyon have put a bid in for Christian Pulisic for 25 million euros or pounds, whichever. There's not too much difference in the conversion rate at the moment. But it's looking like Pulisic is favouring a move to AC Milan for a rumoured £14 million fee. To me, Pulisic, let's lock down Pulisic. Fantastic. He was tremendous. Pulisic since, not so much. Even now, I still think 14 million. When you look at players that are going for certain fees at the moment, you look at Jota from Celtic. He's still in the Saudi league. Admittedly, it's a little bit different. I'll be completely honest. It's different because he's joined the Saudi league. They're investing a lot of money, so 30 million is probably an inflated cost that they're going to pay. But he's not half the player that Jota is. Does that make sense? Like Pulisic, the potential is there. He's not a 14 million pound player, is he?
Pulisic, no, probably not. No, he probably is worth a little bit more than that, I'd say. But at the same time, how old is he now? He's been around. I mean, he's
25, I
five.
want to say. That's just me off the top of my head. I'll have a little look.
Yeah, I'd say probably mid-20s. I think when we bought him, he was quite raw, wasn't he? But I think he has been. He must have been at Chelsea for 3 or 4 years now.
24.
24, right? Okay, so he
So
is.
he's still really young, like in the grand scheme of
Well,
things. Do you ever
yeah,
think?
yeah.
Okay, I know you've got a hatred. I'll say
It's
hatred.
not. It's not a hatred. It's just. I just don't feel like he's fully ever got to his potential, and I suppose that's just he's not the only one. There's plenty of players that we've bought that have never got to their position. But I do think he had the talent. I think that's what annoyed me with him. I knew
Yeah.
I'd seen it, and I'd seen it a lot. I mean, I remember that Real Madrid, the Real goal at the Bernabeu he scored. It was like I don't know if you remember that goal a few years ago. It was just like this guy's really good, and he scored a goal against Liverpool just around that time as well. Like you say, during COVID, I think. I was like, this guy's really good, but I just think he's never quite got his potential. And I know there's a player there, but that in a way that frustrates me more than having a player that's just outright terrible.
Yeah.
Because you know that you kind of question his effort or something, or is he training properly? Or is the manager not getting the best out of him, or whatever it is? But I think he has played for quite a few managers, and it's never really gone that well for him. Because obviously during COVID, that would have been Lampard. Was it Lampard that season or Tuchel? Or a
Yes,
bit
it
of
was.
both?
Yeah.
Yeah. So around that time. But I think under Tuchel, he was pretty awful. And since then, he's under Potter, he was awful, and under Lampard now he's been awful. So I think it's just but then at the same time, he could actually be quite good under Pochettino. He could just suit his style a bit. So to give him away
Yeah.
for 14 million could be criminal in that sense.
I mean, in all competition, he averages about 1 in 6 in terms of winger. So it's quite poor, but that obviously doesn't take into account, 5 minute subs appearance from the bench, things like that. Do you think, like, with the benefit of, I mean, if you were to look at the players that we have on the books at the moment, I would much rather ship out Ziyech because he's not a
Yeah,
Pochettino style player, and I'd
yeah,
rather keep Pulisic.
yeah, definitely. If I had
I'd
a
rather
choice,
keep
yeah.
Pulisic to give him the opportunity. He's a younger player. He's 24. He's rapid. He's got the legs to do so. He can play that. He can play that Pochettino way in that high press. Kind of similar to like how Pochettino developed Heung-min Song. He developed that kind of player. Could we potentially see a return? Could this be a lull? Could that be something that we could entertain? I think the more I think about it, the more I think, do you know what? The fact that we don't have that continuity of players and we've got wholesale changes coming in and out, it's if Pulisic wants to stay as well. Like if we can say, we'll keep you on your current fee, we'll see how you do this year. If it doesn't work out this year under Pochettino, we'll let you go then. And we
Is
go
he?
from there.
Does he actually want to stay though, or is he angling a move? It's a bit unknown, isn't it? He's never really
I think
come out with
I
it,
think
but
I'm not sure who his agent is, but I think his dad is Gobby. I think his dad is
yeah,
really gobby online when it comes to things like his son playing. Any father would be the same, but I think it's potentially to Pulisic's detriment because obviously you could take those sound bites away from it, and I think the online media they take it and they cling on to it and say your dad says that you deserve to play these kind of games, and if it is your dad, like if it's me playing, my dad would probably say the same thing as well. You want your dad to back you up. But I don't hear any rumours. I haven't read any rumours that he wants to leave. He says he favours, and the rumour is if he were to leave, he favours going to Milan over Lyon. Which, let's face it, if you and I are in the same boat, you'd rather play for Milan than you would Lyon. Serie A is a better league than Liga, and let's face it. But it'd be interesting to see. It's kind of weird. Like I think if you asked me 6 months ago, said, "Oh, Pulisic, if he's go, you take him 14 million for him, yeah, get him out the door." But now with Pochettino coming in, I'm thinking, maybe he can do a little magic. Maybe he can tinker
yeah.
around a little bit, see what happens.
But then I suppose it's how long has he got left? I don't know how long he's got left, but for getting that kind of fee, I would imagine it's probably a year. And if it is a year, you can't afford to lose him on a free
Well, let's have a look.
by giving him a run out the next 6 because you'll never in January we're not going to get rid of him for much, are we?
Okay, so yeah, he's got 12 months remaining on his contract.
So he's
So
gone,
essentially,
unfortunately, yeah.
you need to decide. We can offer you a 3-year deal,
Mm.
but chances are, if you're a player at this point, he's on roughly about £150,000 a week. So
Yeah, which is
probably
it's probably like reasonable, but then would he get more if he signed a new contract? You could give
that's
him
the
a
thing.
1 year extension, I suppose, and go from there and see if he takes it. And
Yeah, if he wants to, I mean, it'd be interested to see. Like, I would quite like to see that potentially happen, just to see if we can kind of bring out that lockdown player again that we've not seen in the last 3 years.
there's obviously there is a commercial element as well. The US is a big market for us, and clearly having Pulisic here
He is Captain
Must
America.
it? But
He's
yeah,
known as Captain America over there.
it,
Like he is their
it,
main marketing machine. So why would
yeah.
we want to lose that side as well from a commercial aspect?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, obviously, you can't hold on to players just for commercial unless unless you've got I don't know,
Ronaldo.
yeah, Ronaldo maybe, but we've got enough fans to fill the stadium. It's not like we need. It's not like Pulisic going is going to suddenly empty Stamford Bridge, is it? So
Yeah,
it's.
for
I
sure.
think like I don't think it's a reason to keep hold of him, but
Yeah. But
yeah, there we go.
Dale here saying Pulisic to Charlie is what Willian is to Timber.
Mm.
Um, well, Willian was a fantastic player for Chelsea, so I won't hear any shit said about Willian. I'll have words with Timber when he gets back because I don't know the ins and out of Timber's hatred or dislike of Willian because I think he was absolutely incredible. So, Timber, if you are watching, I think he might be watching. He is currently stateside at the moment, doing some scouting for the MLS for us to try and find the new Christian Pulisic, I believe. We'll have words when you're back. Anyway, we digress. We need to move on. I need to keep this moving. Let's have a look at some more of the outgoing. So, Ruben Loftus-Cheek confirmed to have left Chelsea this week. He signed for AC Milan for an initial £16 million fee, potentially rising to £20 million. I feel like 27 years old. The timing's right now, Charlie. Would you agree?
Yeah, and another frustrating player because another player who I think was technically extremely gifted,
Yeah.
um, could play in any position, great in the air, but for some reason it just never clicked. I don't even know why because I couldn't lack his effort particularly. There wasn't anything I could pinpoint. I just think I just think he doesn't have a. He's almost too much of a utility player, and I suppose that was
Yeah.
to his detriment. He could never get to the level that we needed him to be week in week out. He could at a Crystal Palace or an average Premier League team, but he could never get to the level that we needed him at, and we would always just be used as a utility player. And
Yeah.
like you say, I don't think it's a bad fee, I suppose, and he's going abroad, so
Yeah.
that's
He's
fine. He's out of the way.
yeah.
It kind of best of luck. No hard feelings. Thanks very much.
Yeah, he's not going to a competitor. He's joining Tomori at AC Milan, a player that he knows already. Potentially Christian Pulisic might be going there as well, so he's going to have that familiarity. Giroud still at Milan, so he's going to have players there that he knows. But it is sad, and I think I have to agree. Like it would have been lovely for him to kind of kick on and develop. He's played his best football under Maurizio Sarri, got into the England team as a part of that setup as well. And it's just that Achilles injury. As soon as that Achilles injury happened, that was the start of the decline of Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I don't think he ever achieved that peak that we would have loved to have seen. But fantastic player, and I'm sure most Chelsea fans across the world will wish him all the best. Erhan, I hope I pronounced that right. Moses saying, enough of all these buying of small boys from South America. It's time we focus on the first team. Last preseason, we didn't get all our targets before preseason, and we saw what happened later. So there's been a definite emphasis from Clear Lake Capital on purchasing players to develop long term, whether it be to sign them cheap, young, develop them, sell them high to the big boys in Europe. Definitely has that idea. But Cesare Casadei is another player from Inter Milan that we signed. We signed an Angelo as well from Santos, I believe, for a fee of £50 million. Rumours at the moment that's flying around. I created a little banner here that I'll quickly bring up here now, so that I'll bring it up, mate, as well. Chelsea incoming. So Matthias Franca from Flamengo, 19-year-old central attacking midfielder from Flamengo. I have no idea. I've never heard of him before. He could be fantastic. He could be the greatest player in the world, but I have no idea. I don't watch that. I don't watch that football, if I'm honest with you. And then the other one that we've got coming through is the rumours of Rayan Cherki from Lyon, French under 21 central attacking midfielder. He's skillful. He's kind of similar, I'd say Hazard in a way in terms of stature and low centre of gravity and the ability to dribble. So I think in that respect, he's kind of similar, kind of young. But do you agree with Han here saying, we need to focus on the first team? I feel like we are in a way.
Yeah, we
We're
are, but we're not bringing the big boys through the door, and I think that's the point he's
I
making. In
think
fact, underneath that, he's made another point, which is quite a good, a good point. Is that if you look at Arsenal last season, the business that they did prior to pre-season was I believe Jesus came probably around this
Yeah.
time, I'm guessing, and Zinchenko would have been the other big one. And was there another one? There would have been
Uh,
Was Ramsdale there already? Or did he
no,
come in?
he
He
was
came
signed.
in.
So I
So
think
those three, I think
yeah,
they're the first teamers, aren't they? Basically, that would have come in around that time. And this is the thing that could bite us in the bum is that we could be, you know, we are buying all these young players. They're you can almost palm them to one side because they're not going to be in the first team squad even next season. Most of them will probably stay where they are. They'll get just loaned straight back for a year, or they'll go to
yeah,
Benfica or somewhere for a year. They'll go somewhere else. But these first team, the big hitters, so to speak. I suppose what's been delaying that, if I had to guess, is we've had to sell a certain number of players to know what we've actually got to spend, and we are now seeing selling the big hitters, which is
yeah,
good. Mount, Havertz, Kovacic, but there are still some of those sole players like Pulisic, like Ziyech now as well,
yeah,
who we can't sell, right? So I suppose it's knowing how much money we've got. That's the first thing, and knowing I think Caicedo's coming. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think he's the number one target. I don't think there's anyone else who seems to have the funds and everything else and I think he wants to
yeah,
come. I think
yeah. I
it's
mean,
it's a done deal.
term,
It's kind of a matter
ter-
of time,
terms are agreed.
basically.
Yeah, terms
But
are
I
agreed. Like
suppose
that's the
it's
terms.
I suppose it's who else, who else, and I'm not this Jackson character who's come in. I didn't know too much about, but actually, like I was actually watching his. They did a little video about him. He seems like quite a nice bloke actually, and quite a decent sort of. He looks like he's a first teamer. He's not going to go out on loan or anything like that. He looks like he's first team. But I agree. It's like what we did last summer. Our hands were tied as well. We couldn't sign players for a long time. We didn't have an owner, so that was
Yeah,
one problem. The targets were just bought over from the old regime. I think that's how they
yes,
did it. They just basically bought them over and asked Tuchel who we wanted. That's how we ended up with Aubameyang and things like that.
yeah,
And that was all very lastminute.com. So I
yeah.
think last year was a scattergun approach. There was a little bit more structure to it this year so
Yeah,
far.
and you're absolutely right. Like I would say I disagree with you, Han, and I agree, Charlie. I think I see what you're saying. Like it would be fantastic if we can sign those preseason targets. Last season we didn't have the opportunity to do so. We couldn't. Charlie's right. We were waiting for the takeover to go through. We kind of had to rely on the targets that we had at the moment, which is why we saw such awful spending last summer in terms of Koulibaly coming in on ridiculously high contracts, and then that kind of mantra changed throughout the season to January time when it's like, okay, well, we're going to pay a little bit more, but we're also going to get some younger players in as well, and hopefully get that resale value. Arsenal got almost all their targets last season before pre-season. Now they're doing the same. I think the key in that aspect is Arsenal have the same manager. They've had the same manager for the last 3 seasons, 4 seasons now.
Yeah, and the
So
same owner.
there is a clear pathway of how they want to develop as a club at the moment, and that's why Arsenal are reaping the benefits of this at the moment. Last season we had new owners come through. We started with Tuchel. We changed Potter after 4 days or 9 days or however stupid it was. Potter came in, then we had Bruno, then we had Lampard, and now we got Pochettino. That's the key differentiator. And we should see some positive aspect. Caicedo, I'm fairly certain it's going to get across the line. I agree, probably within the next week or so. It's dependent on, like you said, dependent on the amount. The key thing was FFP. We had to get rid of players. We can't go out sign all these players, and then clubs know if we bought a player for 80 million. Clubs know they can lowball us and say, no, we want this. You're seeing it now with players like Pulisic coming in, Milan coming in at 14 million. They know we have to sell. So that's why they're lowballing. And I think it would have been a lot worse if we then go massive outlay of 200 million and then we've got to try and recoup that loss as well as the losses from seasons before as well. I think oh God, I hate giving Clear Lake Capital credit, but I think they've gone about it a lot better this early into the window than they did last summer as
I
well.
think I think last summer it was a bit of a. I think it was just
Dartboard.
well, I think the reason that they spent a lot of money is because the fans demand it, right? The fans demand the
Yeah.
owners to spend money. They always have, and to get they had a very hard act to follow with Roman, right? So
Yeah.
the only way that they were going to be able to get the fans on side from day one was just to spend money. It was the easiest way to do it, and they assumed that that would, like most of the time when you spend money, it does reflect on something on the pitch, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it just went the wrong way for them. They've sort of admitted that they have admitted their mistakes, and it's cost them money. They didn't enjoy doing. I don't think they, looking back, not just on the pitch, but financially, it has caused them all sorts of problems. There's no doubt about that. But I think this year there has to be a bit more of a balanced approach. They have spent that money. The players that they have bought mostly are still there. There's one or two that have left, but they are mostly still there. They've
Yeah.
probably been forced to sell a few players they didn't necessarily want to or need to, like Mount. Mount maybe would have stayed had they not have botched up the two transfer windows previous. But now they're at a stage where there is a bit. It just seems a little bit more of a structured approach, and they're
Yeah.
selling the right players overall. I would say,
Yeah.
there's not really any that you can go. I mean, if they sold Reece James for 200 million, I'd be a bit concerned. If they
Yeah.
tried, just took the money on a Reece James or or a Chilwell or an Enzo or whatever. If they bought a player last summer and somehow got a deal and just got rid, I'd be a bit more concerned. But I think they are sort of trying to build something here. So,
Yeah.
a bit more
And,
positive about things with them.
yeah, and it's clear they are trying to build something. I'm feeling a little bit more positive. I think, Erhan has mentioned in the comments just below. I'll bring up again. Says we don't get all our targets in it as pre-season starts, and don't blame Pochettino if things don't go quickly. I don't think anybody would, to be honest, at this stage. He's got time now to develop a squad. He has got a whole pre-season. I'm hoping the club don't fire him 9 days after the end of the transfer window in September, because that would be foolish. I'm fairly certain Clear Lake might learn from their mistakes in that scenario. I'm trying to say Clear Lake more than Bowley. Like, I don't know if you picked up on this. I'm trying to make it not just put it rest firmly on him. But Erhan saying the aura that Poch brought today shows clearly that we are moving on from a that's life coach in Potter. Okay, people might think this might be silly of me to say, but I think if at this stage we were doing what we were doing now, and it wasn't Pochettino brought in, and it was Potter, I think Potter would do better this time round. I'm not saying bring Potter back. That's not what I'm
No,
saying. But I think he would have done better than inheriting a squad at the very end of a transfer window that's been built for Tuchel. Does that make sense?
yeah, and he would have done better. And the other thing to note with Poch is, I think Clear Lake will give Poch all the time he wants. It's whether the fans do, and
Give
that's
him
going to be
the
the
time.
key. Ultimately, that was Potter's downfall. It got to the stage where, as much as they probably wanted to give him that pre-season this time around, that because Potter was probably telling them, "Look, come on, I need a pre-season. Trust me,
Yeah.
guys." I just think in the end the fans could. It got to the stage he couldn't go on any longer. It just he had
Yeah.
to go, and everyone agreed with that. And if Potts doesn't start, if by Christmas we're sitting in 10th, under Potts, there will be pressure on him. The fans will put pressure. They won't be. It's just the nature of the beast. Whether you like it or not, we've spent a lot of money on a lot of talent, and there must be enough there to get a certain
Yeah.
form of success. And
Yeah.
moving on to the next one from her hand, if we end up top four and win the Carabao Cup, will it be a successful season? Absolutely, in my opinion. I think uh, you know, um, I really think that would be an amazing season, especially with the fact that the clubs around us seem to be getting stronger as well. I think
Yeah.
the league is becoming so competitive now that top four. Is it top five next season though? Is that just
Yes.
me?
So no,
Ah,
it's
there we
top
go.
five. So due to the change in format, I think the change in format of the Champions League, I think it's not this year. This season, well, next season coming, the 2023-2024 season is the last year of the current format. So,
Mm.
the 8 teams, the 8 groups of 4, it's moving to a league system, which is very confusing. But I think you play 10 group games instead of 6. I
Yeah.
think I might be wrong, but it's something similar akin to that. I'll have to do some reading up on it, just to make myself. But it changes. But it then becomes from top 4 to top 5, and I have to agree. If at this point now, I'd say, and if you offer me top 4 and we win the Carabao Cup, do I think it'll be a successful season? Absolutely, take it in a heartbeat. If you give me that now, I'll take it 100%, because I think that makes sense. The key for us next season is a top 4 finish, a top 5 finish. We can say top 5 now, but a top 5 finish.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. We're closing out over that hour. Charlie, I don't know if you were just about to say something there.
No, I was just saying. No, I was saying we're actually close to the hour. Yeah. So no, it's brilliant, and I
Yeah,
think there's lots to look
excellent.
forward to in the next week. So
There's going to be a lot of moving and shaking. Let's face it. Probably more outgoings and more ingoings coming through. Hopefully, Caicedo gets across the line. Definitely, Mason Mount's probably going to be leaving the next 48 hours. We appreciate you all for joining us this week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button now at youtube.com/WeTalkChelsea, live on TKS TV. As always, greatly appreciated if words. But just before we jump, I mentioned something earlier today in terms of Mason Mount's situation. I used a term I wouldn't usually use, so I want to apologise if I did offend anybody with that. It's not a term that's usually in my vocabulary, especially under that way. But I greatly appreciate you all for joining us this week. We'll be back next week at Monday. Temba returns from America, probably with the new wonder kid from the US, hopefully. I'm not saying he's on a scouting mission for Chelsea, but I'm not saying it. Do you know what I mean? So he could be. Anyway, I digress. Thanks very much for joining us this week. Take care. We'll see you all next week at 9:30.
yeah.